It was the first cookbook that I ever bought for myself, but I picked it up because I knew it had a reputation for having everything that you would need to know as a cook.
Joy of Cooking has raised a nation of home cooks, over 20 million of us. But when the cookbook made its debut, it was at a time in American history when finding joy was as scarce as finding a job. In the early 1930s, Americans were in the throes of the Great Depression. With no work, people lined up outside soup kitchens, and families struggled to put food on the table. In 1931, at 52 years of age, St. Louis socialite Irma Rombauer was no different. She found herself with no income and little savings after her husband Edgar, a prominent attorney, took his own life the year before. Biographer Ann Mendelsohn writes in Standing Facing the Stove that Rombauer was strong-willed, intelligent, forthright, and artistic. Born to German immigrants in 1877, Rombauer spent most of her life in St. Louis, aside from a few years overseas when her father, Dr. Maximilian von Starkloff, served as a diplomat. Mendelsohn also writes that Rombauer is known for being an engaging hostess and was president of the Wednesday Club, a St. Louis social club for women who wanted to gain knowledge and take part in civic projects. Inspired by a successful cookbook published to support a St. Louis children's home, and at the urging of her two grown children, Marion and Edgar, Rombauer went to work writing her own version, despite her lack of cooking experience.
Irma grew up with household servants, and she had a cook. And so when she found herself in reduced circumstances after her husband's death, I think a lot of it was due to she was kind of approaching the kitchen anew and learning a lot of new things for herself as well.
She gathered recipes from church friends, pals at the Wednesday Club, and her family, testing them all and adding witty comments on not only how to prepare the food, but how to serve it.
This is something great to have on hand, in case, your neighbor stops by. So it's a lot of that that you can definitely see that hostess and kind of entertaining background.
The result was The Joy of Cooking, a compilation of reliable recipes with a casual culinary chat.
It's the family miracle, for real.
Yes,
That's pretty much how we feel about it.
Her daughter Marion illustrated the cover, a simple drawing of St. Martha, the patron saint of cooking who wielded a mop to fight off the dragon Tarrasque. 5 years after her first edition, Rombauer found a publisher, Bob's Merrill. Together, they introduced Joy of Cooking to the world.
Yeah, that's a really remarkable thing to me, is that she kind of embarked on this career in her midlife, and she had no prior experience as a writer, and then she seemed to embrace it with a sense of humor. And I think that's what came across in that early edition especially, and what really endeared her to so many readers is that she really was just a personable individual, and she made you feel like she was in the kitchen with you.
Bonjour, my friends. This is Irma Rombauer.
But one of Rombauer's biggest fans was Julia Child.
The first edition of The Joy of Cooking took me a year to write.
From Irma to her daughter Marion, to her son Ethan Becker, and from Ethan to his son John and wife Megan, there's been a new edition roughly every decade.
We don't want Joy to just become a museum piece. We don't want it to be irrelevant. We want it to continue to be a helpful cookbook for home cooks. So we tried very much to stay in that spirit when we were revising it.
The 1943 edition gave space for wartime rationing. In 1951, new appliances like blenders and freezers came into the picture and into the book.
So this one is the 1975 edition. So this is the one that sold over 6 million copies, so the most popular one.
Magdalene Link is a researcher at the Missouri Historical Library. She says since so few copies were printed in 1931, that first edition is tough to find. Is it rare to find signed copies of The Joy of Cooking by Irma Rombauer?
We do have 2 first editions. So one first edition has the original dust jacket on it, and that one is signed by Irma Rombauer, and it's dedicated to Maisie, and Maisie was her husband's secretary, and Maisie helped her with kind of writing early editions of the book and kind of developing some of those early recipes. We also have a first edition that's signed by her daughter Marion, who did the illustrations.
Irma Rombauer died in St. Louis in 1962. Her tomb at Bellefontaine Cemetery is often visited by fans. She is memorialized with a star along St. Louis's Walk of Fame in the Del Mar Loop.
Irma is such an illustrious presence, and I think she deserves the star, absolutely. And it was really cool to see. But yeah, it is humbling to think that we're responsible for her legacy in some ways. We take that to heart.